Welcome to this Zodiacal Constellations class. I'm Kaylin Castell here with Eric Roth, and we're very excited to share with you the Lion and the Priestess. We've been having so many amazing insights about how these two constellations are connected. So it was really smart of us to plan to have these two together. I don't know that we even knew necessarily how great it was that they kind of fell together as part of our class. So anyway, more to be revealed as we go along. So let's just take a moment and bring ourselves into this present moment. Maybe allow yourself a deep centering breath to bring you here in the moment into your body, grounded. We are at the time of this recording at the cross quarter, the time between when the veil between the worlds is thin, and also we're in an eclipse window that will be complete by tomorrow. So high magic that is also being infused into this recording. So whenever it's being listened to, everyone can tune into that. So as you're taking a few breaths into your belly to just bring yourself present, you can think about these factors that are happening and that this energy that is present. And then I'm just going to share this quote with you from Starlight Elixirs and Cosmic Vibrational Healing. So here we go. When you deal with the larger group of stars, constellations, galaxies, globular clusters, various unusual objects, and so on, you have the more difficult question with regards to consensus of energies from many civilizations. And here it is more the representation or signature of the stellar body that allows the individual to tune into this energy and work with it on many levels. This allows the individual more choice in attuning to any specific characteristic of that stellar body. You may have to start understanding the stars with some aspects of the logical thinking process. When you have enough of a foothold to know where you are to understand just basically what this is about, you can let go of this. Let the energies of these stars, elixirs, meditations, and so on be with you. And what you may discover is a part long dormant in you is willing to wake up, touching something old and something new in you, including the capacity to recognize kinship with the starry realms. I just love this so much, and it's such a great reminder, and that a lot of the things that Eric and I are sharing with you, we're looking at what we've known from the past and what others have said in the past. But that's just a starting place, because what we really want to encourage is that everyone find their own direct connection to the stars, to the constellations, to these pieces that we're working with. So as we've been sharing along the way, Ptolemy and how he looked at the constellations, and you can see on this top line, these are the 12 zodiacal constellations. Whoops. And he starts with the maiden and he ends with the lion, which I find fascinating. And I looked to try to find information about why he started with the maiden, or the priestess, we call her the priestess, and why he started with that constellation in his listing, or and ended with the lion. I couldn't find anything, so I don't know, but it's definitely a question to be with. And so just interesting how, over time, the ways of looking at these things do change. So one of the things is that the sun is traveling through the lion from about August 10th to September 16th, from about 18 Leo to about 24 Virgo. And that's just depending on how you're drawing up the constellational energies. But the sun is in the sign of Leo, also called the lion, for 30 days after it begins around 30 days after the June solstice on July 22nd to August 21st. And so you can kind of see how that is, this band here is where it's the sign of Virgo, from Regulus, 0 Virgo, to the tail of the lion is around 21, almost 22 Virgo, and then it goes to about 24 Virgo on September 16th. But by the equinox, the September equinox, the sun is at 0 Libra, and that begins the sign of Libra. And then that's going to cover most of the priestess. So we'll be talking about that. So the sun is then traveling through the priestess, coming into the head of the priestess is still in Virgo, and then it comes into the 0 Libra point, and then cross and stays in, spike is in Libra. And we'll see that it also covers into Scorpio. So the sun is in the seasonal sign of Virgo from June solstice, from after 60 days after the June solstice, from about August 22nd to September 22nd, when we get to the equinox time. So just again, that difference between the seasonal signs and the constellations, the whole point of sharing that with you. So here we see how the seasonal sign of Virgo mostly overlays the lion. There's a little bit of the lion that's still in Leo, but most of it's in Virgo, starting with Regulus. And the heart of the lion, Regulus, this is the 0 Virgo point. So the seasonal sign of Virgo starts here, and the sun is with Regulus around August 22nd every year. And then it stays in the sign of Virgo until it gets to the Libra point. And so what we can say is that the constellation of the lion is one of the easiest to see in the sky. It's really easy to, once you know where it is, once you know how to see it, especially this backward question mark that is in the that is the head of the lion, is easy to see, but you can really see the tail. You can see the whole lion very, very easily in the sky. This is how the lion looks in early March around 10 p.m. And Regulus is one of the 4 royal stars. We've talked about, so far we've talked about a little bit about Fomalhaut, what's not on the zodiacal constellation, but we talked about Aldebaran, and we talked about, and now we're going to talk about Regulus. And the last royal star will be in our next class, and that's Antares, the heart of the scorpion. So the lion is rising in the early evening sky around the March equinox. And so late March, April, May, it's the best times to see the lion in the sky. You can see the whole lion pretty easily because it becomes visible as soon as it's dark and stays in the sky until early morning. Now, the reason this is significant is because we'll see it in a moment. Right now, what we're going to look at is how the 0 Cancer point, or the June solstice point, was with Regulus, the heart of the lion, in 2500 BCE. And the 0 Libra point is going to be with the heart of the lion in 4172. And the reason it takes so long is because it's moving 1 degree every 72 years. And in 2011 was when Regulus moved into Virgo. It was, I think, like November 28th or something of 2011. And that is when the seasonal sign of Virgo, which is that 0 Virgo point, is about 30 days before the September equinox. And that happened, that happens to be where the sun is on August 22nd, 23rd, is the sun is with Regulus now. Now, these seasonal points move about 1 degree every 72 years, and there are 4 major seasons. So these shifts to the major seasonal points are about 6,500 years. And we can see that around 2500 BCE to 4172 of the current era, there's about 6,500 years before the sun will be rising with Regulus in the next equinox point. It was at the solstice point, and then about 6,500 years later, it will be at the equinox point. So pretty interesting to tune into that. And then the 0 Libra seasonal equinox point, again, doesn't reach Regulus, or the heart of the lion, until 4172. But the Libra equinox point reaches Denebola, the tail of the lion, and we're going to talk more about all of this in a moment, around 2604 current era. So it's going to happen sooner, but probably not in our lifetime, because again, 1 degree every 72 years. And then this is what the sky looks like on May evenings. And you can see that the lion is starting to head, it's looking south. You can see the lion pretty easily, but it's starting to head towards the western horizon. And then July evenings, it's definitely on the downward descent towards the western horizon. And in January, it's rising up. Around 10 p.m., you'll see it just above the horizon. And then in February, when the sun is exactly opposite Regulus, the Regulus is just coming up over the horizon. I'll show another image of this in a minute. And that is the time that the lion is rising. And it will reach its highest point due south around midnight in February. And then again, this is March, the lion's rising. This is June when the lion's getting ready to set. And the only time we really can't see the lion is a couple of weeks before and after August 22nd, because it's too close to the sun. So it kind of disappears. And Regulus disappears definitely for that time. Might be even a little longer for the whole entire constellation that you don't see it.
Well, Kaylin, just sharing about Regulus. I remember an experience 4 years ago of seeing Mercury, Regulus, and the moon rise, and just like at the end of the first week of September. So it was just barely visible, like in an early morning sky. So I'm not sure exactly what date it is that it gets. Was it 10 degrees? Would it be? It would be around September 1st or so, right?
Yeah,
September 1st or 2nd.
Yeah.
So that's, and Regulus is something like, you know, if you're starting to see Regulus come up in the morning, that's just an indicator for everyone. Like, okay, we're just a few weeks from the equinox point.
Yes.
So these are stars that are able to really guide you, like without, you know, needing a calendar in front of you, that you can see this happen. If you're tuned into the sky, you've got your calendar right there. You've got your motion of the sky, and you can look at that, and you know, you can have that experiential journey through time, if you will, and space in your own life.
I love that you're bringing that up, Eric, because that's how ancient cultures did it. They didn't have calendars like we do. They weren't like fixated on a month, a day, a year, you know, the clock, and the clocks and calendars, but it's fixated our consciousness in a certain way. And I feel like one of the gifts of really starting to learn more about how this all works is that we can benefit from having clocks and calendars, but if we can also add in this piece, we're creating greater wholeness in terms of our experience of seasons and cycles, and the experience of time as more cyclical rather than kind of the linear experience of time that we tend to have in our culture. So thank you for that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
All right, so Leo is Latin for lion, and it means little king, and it was borrowed from the Greeks from an unknown source. And I thought it was really interesting that the Latin word is related to Greek leon or leontos, or luantos. And it was the name of a Spartan king, Leonidas, the lion's son. But the Greeks, their word coming from Coptic was labe or laboi, meaning lioness. And I have long felt that the lion isn't necessarily masculine. I think it's both feminine and masculine. And so I created this meme a while back, a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, of the leonine heart. And when Regulus was with the sun, and I was thinking, so if she's the sovereign queen or king, and this is connected to these mysteries of self-love, self-reliance, self-determination, self-approval, self-confidence, self-acceptance, self-sufficiency, self-respect. These are energies that we associate with the sign, the seasonal sign of Leo, but it is also very much connected to the star Regulus and the lion constellation. And we'll see more about that as we're going along here. Now, something about the lion is that it has been long felt by Egyptian, especially archaeoastronomers, that the Sphinx was created probably around 13,000 years ago, facing east when the lion was rising at the March equinox. So it was facing itself, like the that constellation would come up and look the Sphinx in the eye. So I thought, okay, I really want to know more about the Sphinx. I knew some of this, but some of it was a little bit new to me. And this is the idea that the Sphinx was female to the Greeks. In the Greek mythology, she was the daughter of Orthos and of Acnita or Chimera. I don't know why they don't know which one for sure, but that's what they say. And she had a human head and the body of a lion, and she had wings of an eagle and the tail of a serpent. And that kind of connects into these 4 constellations that are the idea of the bull, the lion, the scorpion, and the water bearer. That some had said that the Sphinx was representative of those 4 constellations in times past. Now, it's not a complete match from what they're sharing here, but you can see this lioness, she's got her wings, she's got her serpent's tail. She looks like a lion, but she has the head of the woman here. So again, that sort of a confirmation that there's a feminine perspective around this imagery. And according to the myth of that she was outside the city of Thebes, and she would ask a riddle to the travelers who came by before she would let them pass. And the riddle she asked was, what is the creature that has 1 voice, but has 4 feet in the morning, 2 feet in the afternoon, and 3 feet at night? And if the person got that answer wrong, she would devour them. So it's like, and most people didn't get it right. So she, I guess that's how she survived, or whatever she was doing with that. But the story of Oedipus is that when he's asked the question, he gets the answer right, because he said it's man, or I'd like to say human, that crawls on all 4s as a baby, that walks on 2 legs as an adult, and that needs a cane to walk when it's old. So that's the 4, 2, and 3 expression of the 4, 2, and 3. Anyway, and so then when he answered that question right, she asked the second riddle, which she didn't usually get to ask. And she said, there are 2 sisters. One gives birth to the other, who in turn gives birth to the first. Who are they? And because, according to the Greeks, day and night were both feminine, they had words that were both feminine words for day and night. The answer is day and night. That day gives birth to night and night gives birth to day. And they keep doing that over and over again. So Oedipus got both of those questions correct. And so she kills herself, according to their story. But I think that maybe this is a story that's describing the transition from old religious practices represented by the Sphinx or the matriarchy to the Olympian deities that were represented by Oedipus or the patriarchy. So it could be that this is a story that's speaking to the turning of an age. Connected to the lion constellation, who maybe perhaps there was a certain season or certain energy that was present at that time when these stories were being told. Now, what's interesting is that the Sphinx is oriented from west to east, looking towards the rising sun, and then the sun sets behind it. So here you see the sun coming up over the Sphinx's head and lighting up the head. And here you see the sun is setting on the Sphinx's shoulder. And so this is why they feel that the Sphinx is way older than archaeologists had currently, or had, more recently thought. They'd say like 5,000 years ago. It's probably more like 13,000 years ago, or almost 13,000 years ago. And what they feel like is that this orientation was created when the spring equinox sun was rising with the lion. So the lion was looking at it, like looking at the lion constellation rising up at the spring equinox. And of course, the spring equinox was super important. And some of their biggest ceremonies and things were done around the spring, the point of spring. And so, if we take this back to 10,000 BC or 8,000 BC, this was around the Stone Age, and when sun worship was really, really important. So it would make sense that maybe this was what was going on then. And what we have now, because we're almost 13,000 years later, or around 13,000 years later, is that the March equinox, when the sun is setting, the lion is rising. So the Sphinx is looking at itself at the March equinox as the sun sets. It can see the lion's rising up. So that seems really significant and timely. How do we know we're at the turning of a great age? Well, there's lots of factors, but this seems to be another one of them. You have any thoughts about that, Eric?
Oh, lots of thoughts, but yeah, this is, I mean, I agree with this back at that time. That's, I feel certainly a lot stronger that the Sphinx was built in response to the connection with the lion at the time of the March equinox. And so we're seeing the as above, so below, is within, so without moment there. And yeah, I mean, it's maybe very, very difficult to actually date the, like, on a detailed level, the Sphinx. But when you bring in other factors, especially its relationship to the sky, which Egypt and many other places on the planet connected to very deeply, then you begin to get into other knowledge, and knowledge that comes from other sources, and which is just as important and real as the scientific part of that. So we see this, and that this is the human story, the human journey here in one place. But many people have seen this, have been to Egypt, and have connected it over the thousands of years. And so it's part of our own lineage for human beings. So in another several thousand years, I mean, of course, Regulus is going to be in there in 2100 years, I think, right? 4100 something.
Yeah,
It'll be
it'll be with the September
autumnal.
equinox, and
Yes.
and
So
2100.
that'll be opposite where it was,
Yeah.
roughly 13,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So we get that, like, that transmission through that, and like, okay, wow, okay, this is coming in at the September point instead of the March point. What does that mean? And so this is for us to connect into that space for ourselves, and work with that personally and collectively.
Yes, exactly. And you're making helping me to think about at this point, because of the way that things have weathered around the Sphinx and so on. It's definitely older than 5,000 years or 6,000 years or whatever. And it may possibly be way older than 13,000 years. It may have been that this was all created 26,000 years ago, when we were in the time we are now, when the Sphinx is right, or the lion is rising in front of the Sphinx at the equinox, at the March equinox. Who knows? That is something to contemplate. So
Yes.
yeah. Anyway, all right. So here's just some images of here's the lion rising in March on the equinox. This is around 6 p.m. So the lion's coming up into the sky, and the sun is setting here around 6 p.m. And it's in the circlet of the fish, kind of close to the water bearer, considered to be the opposite of the lion. And then you can see this again here, the same thing. And this is the Sphinx facing east, and the lion so they're like facing each other at that equinox point. So just so you could see that from you can't necessarily see unless you're it would be really fun to sit on the Sphinx, and you see all this weathering around the Sphinx. This is from water, and that takes thousands of years for that to happen. So again, why we know it's older than what they had originally thought. One of the reasons we know it's older than what they originally thought. Anyway, so pretty cool. So here's a bunch of names. I'm not going to go through all these. You can check this out when in the PDF later, but just there's been so many different names and ways of speaking about this constellation over time. And this was something I found really fascinating from the book Star Names, that Copernicus named the star Regulus as the diminutive of the earlier name Rex, equivalent to the Greek Basilikos, meaning little king, as named by the 2nd century Greek astronomer Ptolemy. So Ptolemy comes back into the story. Marcus Attilius Regulus flourished in the 3rd century BCE as a Roman general and statesman whose career, greatly embellished by legend, was seen by the Romans as a model of heroic endurance. He served from 267 to 256 BCE. Now, there's not any way for us to know if Marcus Regulus had a personal connection with this star, but it's fascinating that the star was named Regulus after his life was complete. And that he represented those qualities of that. So that those are some qualities that have been associated with this constellation. And part of the
What did
story,
they call that star prior to that?
Rex, it was called Rex. And then
Right, you just
I
covered,
think
you
it was
covered it.
Ptolemy who called it Basiliscos, whatever, however you say
Well, I
that.
guess I was thinking of like I'd have to go back and look at like what the Sumerians called it. That's kind of what I was thinking of.
Oh yeah, I don't know if it's listed here. It was Maga. We'll see that Maga is one of the nakshatras. It was let's see, Acadia. It was Amal Galur. Yeah. Anyway, there's these different names, lots of different names that it has been called by different cultures.
Wait, go back to that name again. I wanted to see that. Nineveh tablet. Is
The
that
Nineveh
from
tablet, yeah.
the Mesopotamian area?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. And in Arabia it was Malakavi or whatever, meaning kingly. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, anyway, lots of different names for this. The Greeks, there's in the 12 labors of Hercules, I think this was the first or second labor of Hercules. He's sent to kill the Nemean lion, who is killing people, killing the local inhabitants. And so, but this lion has a hide that is so tough, it cannot be pierced by any weapons. So the only way that Hercules can kill the lion is to choke it. And there's like 2 entrances into the cave where the lion's living. So one of them is blocked off, and the other one, and then he goes in the other one and he winds up choking the lion. And then he takes the hide from the lion using the lion's claws to skin it. And then he creates a pelt that's like this impenetrable, kind of like armor that we would imagine now. And he even uses the head of the lion as part of that armor that he's created for himself. And so he gives him, putting that lion's head on, it gives him a fierce appearance. Anyway, so this is from an ancient Greek imagery. This is maybe a little more recent expression of that, him choking the lion. But here's some statues that show him, and these don't look so much like choking, but maybe that's what they're trying to depict there. Anyway, yeah, during the first of his 12 labors, this is what he was asked to do. And then he was originally given 10 labors, and then I think this was one of the ones they decided he didn't really do the job by himself, so it didn't count. So they gave him a couple more. That was partly with the bull and the lion that happened. Anyway, but because of the killing of the lion, they decided to place this lion amongst the constellations to honor its place as the king of beasts. So that's the Greeks telling of that story. In South America, many of the Peruvian Indian tribes saw this as a mountain lion. And then the Christians in the Middle Ages would refer to this constellation as one of Daniel's lions, Daniel on the lion's den. And interestingly, in China, it was seen as a horse or part of a dragon. So they didn't see it as a lion. It's one of the cultures that I found that didn't, but most of everything that I saw, they tended to see this as a lion. So I just thought I'd share a little piece about the so-called 8-8 Lion's Gate. Many of you have probably heard of it. If you haven't heard of it, it's based on the month of August being the 8th month of the year and the 8th day of the year. And because they see the sun as being in the sign of Leo, and it is in the sign of Leo at that time, They call it the Lion's Gate, but literally on August 8th, the sun is just on the edge of the crab here. It's kind of get more between the crab and the lion than it is in the lion. It doesn't really get all the way to the lion until it's enters the head, a star that's connected to the lion on August 10th. And that's the star Al-Turf we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. But if you're looking at the numerology, what we could say about that is that, of course, anything we place our attention on, there's going to be that the number magic is going to have some meaning. If we put our attention on it, it will have meaning. August 8th, August 17th, and August 26th, because 1 and 7 equals 8 and 2 and 6 equals 8. So those 3 dates would be at like an 8-8 date. So I like to think of it as the 8-8 time gate. That so if you are interested in that, you can check out the article that I created around that, but it's actually not in the lion, and most people don't realize that. So I just wanted there to be a little bit of that. Plus, the other thing to know, many of you may already know this, but the months of July and August are inserted into the calendar, and they put them in the summer months because Julius Caesar, July, Augustus Caesar, August, they wanted their months in the summertime. They wanted people celebrating them and honoring them in the summer. And they made sure those months have 31 days so they could be longer days. So you know, it's like, it doesn't go 30, 31, 30, 31. It goes 31, 31, 30, 30, 31, 31, 30, because they wanted their months to be longer. So they were celebrating themselves, a little bit of a ego thing going on there. And so September, which really was supposed to be the 7th month, is now the 9th month. And the rest of the months of the year that are named after a number, like October is named after 8, October. It's actually the 10th month. So that's why, in case you didn't know. Now, this is some of the ways that the lion has been looked at in the past. And sometimes it wasn't considered all that great. Interestingly, Ptolemy suggested that the neck, the back, and the wing of the lion brings trouble, disgrace, and sickness, affecting the part of the body ruled by the sign, especially if they happen to be in conjunction with the moon. Like, say your moon is in this constellation. That's how they were seeing it way back when. They were also seeing that Manlius was looking at it as, and he's 1st century AD, so he's a little bit after Ptolemy, but that there's some hubris that might be connected, some ego energies that might be connected to the lion. And who can doubt the nature of the monstrous lion and the pursuits he prescribes for those born beneath his sign or constellation? The lion ever devises fresh fights and fresh warfare on animals and lives on spoil and pillaging of flocks. So not very nice way of looking at it. And that, that there's those who just have too much ego and they feel like they should be treated in a certain way and that sort of thing. And their temper can be equally prone to fitful wrath and ready withdrawal. And guileless are the sentiments of their honest hearts. So, so these are some of the things that have been seen around this, this constellation in the past, or the stars of this constellation in the past. But Eric Morris, who wrote a book, I think this was back in the 1980s, he linked the lion with joy, love, free-flowing inspiration and creativity, revealing the inner self and the outer world. So with this in mind, we could remember that the energy of the lion has its own energy. It's different than the sign, whatever sign might be overlaying it. And so currently, mostly overlaying the constellation of the lion is Virgo. So how is the lion informing the sign of Virgo? So I thought about this and I was like, well, we could imagine that the playful, loving, joyous aspect of the lion is influencing the seasonal sign of Virgo that tends to be seriously focused on the sacred work. And the lion is adding a sense of playful service, finding ways to have the sacred work be filled with joy and fun. So here's a lion playing with a ball and actually has close to his heart, which I don't think is really great. So we could ask, and you can create any kind of question you want, especially if you have planets in Virgo that are in this constellation. You may want to spend some time tuning into this to see how the lion is informing your Virgo planets. How can the sacred work also incorporate the importance of healthy self-love, free-flowing creative expression, and playful fun, while still serving the sacred and serving the divine spirit within us all? So that's just a starting place, just to kind of get you thinking about how you might want to ask this question, and be with how is the lion informing any Virgo planets that you might have. Because pretty much if you have any planets in Virgo, they're in this constellation or close to that. So here's the main stars of the lion. I just put this in here so you could have a sense of it. We're going to focus on Zosma, Denebola, Regulus, also Alturf, which is over here, and it doesn't show up in this this thing, but it shows up over here. These are the main stars of the lion and their degrees. So you can see like Algiba, who's here at what kind of looks like at the neck, the base of the neck or the throat of the lion, is at 29 Leo, almost ready to go into Virgo. Probably will go into Virgo in the next 4 or 5 years or so. Zosma is at 11 Virgo. Alturf is at 18 Leo. And I think pretty much the rest of the stars, well, Aljaba, Adhafra, and Subra, and Russell Sad, Borealis, these are all in the head of the lion, are still in the sign of Leo. Yeah, these are all still in Leo.
Yeah, Subra is the foot, the front foot.
The front
right?
foot, yes, right,
Yeah.
yes, Alpha. Yeah. So just so you can get a sense of that. So we're going to focus on the main bright stars of the lion. I mean, we could really spend like a couple of classes just looking at the stars of the lion. And I think we could do the same for the priestess, because there's so much going on with both of them. So, but Regulus is a bright star. It's the 21st brightest star in our night sky. It's at a magnitude of 1.36. Now, the higher the number, the dimmer it is. So if it was like at 0 magnitude, it would be even brighter. Think Sirius is like at around 1 magnitude, if I'm remembering right. It's the brightest star, but so Regulus is pretty bright. It's about 78 to 85 light years from the Earth. It's 88 times brighter than our sun, but it's so far away we don't see it that way. It has a 3.8 times the mass of the sun, so it's way bigger and way brighter, but because it's so far away, it doesn't look that way to us. Now, Regulus was in the seasonal sign of Leo for 2,160-ish years, because it's not exactly precise. On November 28th, 2011, according to Solar Fire, Regulus entered the sign of Virgo, and that started a new 2,160-year cycle, with Regulus being overlaid by the seasons of Virgo. So as we already mentioned, it's going to be the rest of our lives, and probably the next few lifetimes that we have the sign of Virgo overlaying the heart of the lion. And so again, Regulus meaning little king, or the king, the regulator. It has to do with the heart energy. But I think that is, again, it also could represent the feminine, like the Sphinx being female, and Sekhmet also being a lioness who wears the sun on her head. And she has literally, she's like, I had this realization this last month when I have this strong connection to Sekhmet. And there's a video that, if you haven't seen it, that I tell the story about my connection to Sekhmet and how she is Venus with the sun. She's the feminine with the sun. She wears the sun on her head, and she's all about transformation and how do we release and let go of all the distortions so that we can get a better connection to our heart energy and come from the heart and come from that place, because she was also a healer. So Sekhmet is a powerful force and definitely connects into the lion constellation. Regulus is associated with royalty or the divine, and how and also we could imagine that it's the royalty or the divinity within us. We're all divine beings, we just don't remember. And so when we can tune into this star, one of the 4 royal stars of the ancients, when we can tune into the heart energy, it was also connected to the Hall of Records that was said to be under the paw of the Sphinx or under the Sphinx in some way. So this heart energy, it's if we think about it, we could say it's the doorway to the Hall of Records that is our DNA. Our DNA is a Hall of Records. It's the record of our own existence, our ancestral existence, but it's also probably even much more than that. So the Regulus also represents great success when practicing forgiveness from the heart, as it helps one forego the need for revenge. And those who seek revenge with Regulus prominent on their chart will lose their standing in society. So not a good idea, especially if you have strong Regulus on your chart. Now, interesting, the fixed stars, we've talked about this book before, and I decided to put this in now, partly I have to admit, because my midheaven is in Leo with Jupiter and Pluto, and they're very close. I'll show you the chart in a moment. They're all within 5 or 6 degrees, within 3 to 5.5 degrees of Regulus. And so on the midheaven, it says that Regulus will raise the native to high positions in life, exceeding the environment the native was born into. And I would probably say that's true because I grew up in a poor family. I think I live a higher station in life than I grew up in. But some of these other things I don't necessarily totally relate to. But what was interesting, I found fascinating about this, is that Elspeth Ebertine, she had Regulus on the midheaven, and she became an astrologer to noble people in high positions. So she played that out in her life, and she says she does say in her book that not everyone was going to make a royal astrologer, even if they have the necessary knowledge and capabilities. But she was, during the First World War, her book Royal Nativities was published. There followed commissions from royal houses and ruling industrialists. And then she studied historical events with the planetary configurations in each case and came to the following conclusions: that when Mars or Saturn are in conjunction with Regulus, especially exciting events are always recorded, like assassinations, coups d'etats, revolutions, revolts, demonstrations, overthrow of heads of state, and similar events. And I do remember at some point, and I couldn't find that information, but I had looked it all up at one point, some of these things that had happened, the dates and times when Mars or Saturn was with Regulus. But that's definitely something just to be conscientious of. So Starlight Elixir says that Regulus helps with releasing limiting patterns and developing the superpower of love. Regulus helps with unblocking deeply buried subconscious patterns through commitment and perseverance, creating greater emotional stability and a willingness to transform these patterns. So you've got to have a willingness. If you don't, it's not going to happen. It doesn't happen for you. You have to be willing to engage that possibility of transformation. So a sense of patience and deeper appreciation of these patterns can occur, so a deeper learning and understanding can emerge, intended to support appreciation of these patterns, accepting them, knowing themselves, and transforming them as a result. And then psychological techniques such as emotional therapy work, various forms of body work, trauma release practices, deep movement, meditation, while working with Regulus is especially supportive in helping release these patterns. So pretty much everybody has some level of trauma. So even if you don't have a powerful personal connection to Regulus, you can work with this star to help release those traumatic patterns. And that's basically what they're telling us in Starlight Elixirs. So the planets with Regulus are, these are just the dates you can come and tune into. And then there's going to be a series of occultations, moon occultations over Regulus starting July 26th of 2025 to December 27th of 2026. And those are, I feel like, are times when we can really maximize our connection to the power of this, because the moon is a transmitter. And when the moon passes directly over Regulus, it's transmitting even more specifically and more directly to us on planet Earth when we tune into it. And then here's my midheaven at almost 24 Leo, my Jupiter at 24 Leo, and my Pluto at 26, almost 27 Leo. And so at the time in 1956, when I was born, Regulus was at 29 Leo 13. So it was just about 3 degrees away from my Pluto, and about 5 degrees away from my Jupiter, and about 5.5 degrees away from my midheaven. And then, of course, the other thing is that I have the Neptune had just gone into Scorpio at the time that I was born, and it was about 6 degrees away from Kambalia, that was at 6 Scorpio at that time. So you can see here, here's Regulus, here's Jupiter on my chart at the time that I was born. And then Pluto was up here, and actually also was Haumea. So I find that interesting. I'll have to look at that more deeply. And then here's Neptune between Spica and Kambalia. And we'll be talking about these stars more as we go further into all of this. So so this is Alturf, the Eye of the Lion. And I'm just gonna, I think I'm gonna go through this one pretty quickly because I feel like we're running out of time here. But this, it was either the mouth of the lion, or you can see it here, Alturf looks kind of like it's the mouth of the lion. But originally the meaning of the word is the glance or the lion's eye. And so my sense about this when I tuned into it is, what is the lion seeing and then willing to communicate? And then you can work with these questions around that. And then of course, here are the planets with the eye or the mouth of the lion. And then this is Robert Kitson. He did a lot of work for Astral Gold program, the astrology program. And he says that this is a showy star that likes to be noticed. Performing instincts, insight, and generosity are part of it. It shows sincerity. And to avoid excessive pride, or you can trip over yourself. So again, if you want to tune into this particular star, these are the dates for doing that when planets are nearby. And then there's an article listed on the class page, and it also has when the moon is with Alturf as well. Then Zosma is on the back or the haunch of the lion. And basically Eric Morse says that this is a benefic star, but the challenge can be if you feel like you know better than anyone else, the ego thing coming into play. But if you can let go of that attitude, then this star is a source of strength in any situation demanding hard work. And that we can use anything. Basically, I like that he said this. It's like all else in the heavens, it only shows what we have to use wisely and beneficially. It does not force us into how we actually use these tools. It's our choice. It's up to us. So something to keep in mind. And then George Noonan in his book, Fixed Stars and Judicial Astrology, says that Zosma can indicate those who have the ability to prophecy, and that there's connections to this aspect of being the oracle. And then Robert Kitson also says ancient lore associates Zosma with misfortune, but today this is about the soul-making journey, purifying the ego to unleash creativity. So I like that perspective better than just saying, oh, you have a planet with that star, so that's unfortunate for you. And again, this is about how are we tuning into and understanding and focusing our attention on these energies and working with them in a way that's beneficial and supportive. So Zosma is a star emanating leadership and charisma, being in the public eye that may induce a sense of uncertainty not visible to others. So working with Zosma assists a person in moving through this uncertainty and helps them see the true love and caring being funneled through them through the star energy. A true leader guides from the point of view of others. This is where a sense of joy can be experienced in leading from the heart in a way that supports those they are leading. This enhances self-worth both for the one leading and those experiencing such leadership. So that's the possibility of working with Zosma. And you can, again, these are when the planets will be there. So now we got Denebola. I think this is the last star of the stars that we're going to focus on for the lion. And this is the lion's tail. So you can see here, Denebola here at the tail of the lion, also here. This was, I created this, I think it was back in, maybe it was 2017 or 2019, I'm not sure. But there was a new moon so the moon was with the sun, and they were very close to Denebola at the time that was happening. So this star is a harbinger of change. They often would see that it was the change, that when the star was present, that the weather would grow colder when the star was starting to rise in the evening sky, and warmer when it was setting after the sun. But now we're in the opposite time of that from whenever this was originally created, because now the star is rising in the spring when it's starting to get warmer, and it's setting in the fall when it's starting to get colder. So so what was once a true seasonal perspective in the northern hemisphere is now true for the southern hemisphere, because they're in the opposite season. Let's see. So Eric Morris talks about how Denebola has the ability to draw on what truly serves the highest and best from the past while looking forward to the future. And sometimes we have to look back so we can move forward, and then to be able to use the strength that comes from this part of the sky and use it wisely and constructively. So the lion or the lioness represents the codes of royalty, as in the service of the king or queen to the people. It was at a time when the people did not serve the king or queen, but the king or queen served the people. That has been kind of forgotten in our current time. So the highest and best of these codes from our ancient origins, and this assists in bringing through new visions of how these codes are evolving to best serve at this time. And it's truly serving when it can help us really support us as a radiant, shining one, as a divine being, as someone who truly loves who they are, and thus empowers others to express their own true divine nature. And again, Robert Kitson says that this is strong, capable individual with some unpredictability. The intent is to take the high road, and the caution is indifference to commonplace ideas or people and being snobby. So I came across this story a couple years ago when there was something really, I think it was when that new moon was with Denebola. This is Wayne Dyer telling the story about a kitten who is chasing its tail, and an alley cat is basically comes along and says, "Hey, why are you chasing your tail?" And the kitten says, "I just got out of cat philosophy school. Today we learned two things. The first is that the most important thing to a cat is happiness. And the second thing," asked the old alley cat. The kitten took a deep breath. "The second thing is that happiness is found in our tail. So I've been chasing my tail because when I catch it, I'll have a hold on eternal happiness." The old alley cat was amused. I may have not had the same advantages you had in life, and I never went to cat philosophy school, but I've been out there on the streets for the last 13 years and I've learned the same thing. "Really?" said the kitten. "Did you catch your tail and get eternal happiness?" "No, I never caught it." The kitten stopped chasing his tail and turned to face the alley cat. "Well, what happened then?" the old alley cat said. "It's true that happiness is the most important thing in the world for a cat. And it's true that it's indeed located in our tail." He paused before continuing. "But I've discovered that if I go about my business and live my life the way I want to, my tail follows me wherever I go." So this basically means happiness isn't about acquiring things or searching for it or chasing your tail, but it's about a state of mind, a feeling, a conscious choice you can choose in every moment. Happiness is found within. It's not external to you. Time to be happy now. So here we have the kitten playing with the grown lion's tail. I just thought that would be something that would be fun to energize in terms of our understanding of this star. And then the star assists in comprehending the deep meaning of leadership as it relates to leading from the heart in ways that represent the greater good of others. Operating from charisma, the intended expression of leadership is to be the voice for many, energized by kindness, humility, and compassion. Using this star energy for a group or individual healing is highly beneficial. Denebula can help heal depression, schizophrenia, and aberrated behavior, and support individuals in becoming a leader of their own life. This means they're not dependent on others to lead them. So that's something that we can energize as we work with this particular star. And here are the dates of when different planets are with this star. And then we're coming up, so at the time of this recording, we're coming up on the Leonids meteor shower, which is one of the most spectacular meteor showers that happens. So something to be aware of, and you won't see it until probably after midnight, before dawn in the morning. And there are times when this meteor shower can have as many as hundreds of meteors, but it can also be as low as about 15 meteors per hour. So here's like a prolific Leonids meteor shower, and here's a less prolific meteor shower. The last really prolific one happened in 2002, and the next one will be in 2035. And these are fabulous to see because they tend to be fireballs and earth grazers, and their magnitudes are really bright, like they're really, really easy to see. So since that's coming up soon, I highly encourage people to go out and check it out if it's not too cold and you are inspired to go out to do that.
Caitlin, on Friday, a meteor streaked over part of Southern Oregon. I didn't see it, but I talked to a couple of friends who saw it, and actually it's possible part of it landed in part of Northern California, north of Sacramento in the mountainous area. And apparently it's being blamed for burning down a house out there.
Wow.
In just kind of in the rural Nevada County of California. And this guy, fortunately, he was outside the house when that happened, and his dog couldn't get out at the time. And they spent a couple hours trying to put out the fire with the fire department. But anyway, it was just like shocking because there's video of the meteor, and it was really super bright. And I don't know how big it was. This is something that I need to go and look at. But I first heard it from having dinner with my friends last night, and I looked up the video, but I don't know if it came from like an early part of this,
Yeah,
this
because
meteor
the
storm.
Leonids is like, a couple of weeks on either side of the
Right.
peak point, which is the 17th of November. So it might have definitely been one of those.
But somebody was one of the astronomers that were responding there is saying it was possible it came from the Taurids, which I think are
interesting.
still or peaked just recently.
Right.
But with that, they have to look back at because they can tell when they get video of the meteor and they know what direction it's coming from, they may be able to extrapolate where the direction in the sky it came from. So
Wow.
So anyway, it was just fascinating you bringing this up, and I just heard that story last night and saw the local news report about the guy's house that burned.
Yeah.
And he was a really rural, like farm country up in Northern California, and like I don't know, I don't know what specifically on the map, but there's hardly anyone around them.
Yeah,
So just wild that it was hot enough and whatever it created a fire.
Yeah. Well, I know there's meteor craters all over the planet, and supposedly it was a meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs. So, we are vulnerable to that. But as long as they're in the sky, they're really fun to see.
They are. It's pretty rare for us to be actually impacted, especially one's property or a life to be lost, and extremely rare. It's like he was described as like 1 in 4 trillion chance of something like that happening. So, it's like, and his comment was maybe I should play the lottery.
Right.
Maybe that's the time of my life now.
Right. Especially with those, if you've already experienced something with those kind of odds, maybe you would win the lottery. That would be awesome.
Yeah. So
So
just a little,
I think what we're going to do is just kind of speed over the nakshatras, and people can come
yes,
back and look at this, these slides on the nakshatras. So
overlaying the lion and the priestess.
the lion and the priestess, yeah, the ones that cover the lion and the priestess. Now, I just to kind of sort of launch Eric off into talking about the priestess, you can see that this is the strength card in the tarot. And then there's all these other images of the lion and the priestess together, that come from ancient like art expressions and that kind of thing. And so the lion and the priestess energy or imagery is so, it's like everywhere. There's like so many places that have had this. The Greeks and the Romans saw the priestess as the great mother goddess, Sabel, with her lion drawn chariot, symbolizing the lion constellation sitting next to the virgin priestess. And here, she's like petting, loving the lion. She's got the 8 over her head. So there's that, or the infinity symbol over her head. This is pretty cool. Anyway, so there's a lot of mythology and a lot of connections that bring the lion and the priestess together. And one of the things that I was thinking about, I shared with Eric as we were getting started, is that part of my story that I shared with Sekhmet is that there's an initiation for the winged priestess. And that's when she goes into the sarcophagus, and then she has this whole experience. And then when she comes out of it, she's considered a winged priestess. There's the winged lion, the Sphinx, the winged lion, and the priestess is often depicted, the constellation is depicted with wings. So there's a connection there that we're just starting to explore. So just to kind of plant that little seed, and to just let you know that there is such a strong, powerful connection between these two constellations and the mythology that is connected to them. So with that, I'm turning it over to Eric.
Yeah, thank you, Caitlin. I was just thinking when you were talking about Regulus earlier, and I've done a number of charts where people have personal points, planets that are in that late degrees of Leo, early degrees of Virgo. And I always bring up the image of the Sphinx and that combination of the lion and the priestess, and Virgo and the lion or Leo, and how those mysteries are interweaved into that star to some degree now, especially what Dane Rajar writes about in his astrological signs book, where he's going over that energy of Leo and Virgo and how intertwined they are. And when they do intertwine, it creates this incredible complexity of like almost an unknowable thing, but yet there's a strong motivation to try to discover what that is. So anyway, you have it on your chart, of course, with your MC and Jupiter there, so along with Pluto, with that connection. Anyway, just a little side note there. And so everybody, when you're looking at the charts, you can see where these stars are. Like in this case here, we have the priestess, and we're not going to talk about all these stars that are named here, just a few of them, just like with the lion. But you can see Denebula, I've got listed here at nearly 22 degrees Virgo, and it goes all the way to 10 and a half, at least 10 and a half Scorpio. So that's almost it's like a sign and a half, if you will, of distance. So this is a really large constellation. The lion seems to be like roughly regular size, I guess, if you can call it that. But these two have intermixed a lot. And even the scales, which I'm going to also briefly mention in one of the slides, plays a huge role in this too. So Spica being another profound star right in the center of all of that, or near the center of all of that. So you can see where Libra starts, right between the star of Zavijava and Zanaya. And actually Zavijava is going to mark the equinox in less than 200 years officially. But Libra is that time of September equinox. And then we can see where this constellation's in 3 different signs. Virgo, just barely into Virgo, but all of Libra is contained in there, and then of course a portion of Scorpio until you get into the scales. So in an overlay, this in particular, this constellation is helping to inform especially the sign of Libra. It's like shifting what it used to be into something that is more about sacred relationships, more about the connection to the earth, and what is the great patterning of who we are. But to a greater degree, our connection to earth and the cosmos itself, like as part of that relationship, what is our relationship to earth, what is our relationship to the cosmos? I think that the priestess is there helping to represent that on a larger scale for all of us. And so maybe that's as it's continuing its journey through Libra over these next few thousand years, we can see how this is all going to play out. And maybe this is part of that experience. And eventually, with the equinox point moving into the lion, transitioning there, we're going to be seeing that play out more and more. So here we go. So this is just a basic example of like looking on a chart. Extends, this is roughly, again, this is not precise, from about 23 degrees Virgo to about 12 degrees of Scorpio. Now, Denebula sits at a roughly 22 degrees Virgo. So you can see those two constellations are really, really close to each other, what Kaylin was stressing there. So when you're looking at the lion, try to imagine, like, what does that mean to merge with the priestess? So we can all have that, take part in that co-creation. We can go on. There we go. So, and I love this little picture you got on your website, so I used it. I got your link there so people can click on that. So this is one of the constellations, and certainly with the lion would be up there. One of the oldest that we've recognized, and by some estimates, at least 15,000 years. And it's usually seen as some kind of a feminine or a goddess figure, or connected to Earth Mother, or some derivation or allegory of the cycles of the Earth. So I list a number of the big ones that have been called this constellation: Ceres or Persephone, Isis, the Corn Mother, Hathor, Ishtar, Rhea, Astarte, Aragon, the Maiden, Mary holding the child, the Virgin or Virgin Priestess, the Goddess of Justice, especially combined with the Scales constellation, which I have a slide for that. And then in most depictions, the priestess is seen holding some type of grain. And also, I don't list it right here, but she typically is shown with wings. And you see that in various astronomy night sky programs. If there's a visual depiction of her, there's kind of angel wings behind her as she's holding the grain. It's like a cosmic priestess there. So, and how I look at this and the imagery there and our connection to her, it definitely is this strong connection with the earth and reaping the bounty of the earth through the harvest. It reminds us of the fertile soils that co-create with the animals, plants, and humanity are our shared responsibility. In order to live a healthy life, we need to have a healthy relationship with the earth. The Virgin shows us earth is not owned or controlled by anyone, but is Gaia herself. We are the caretakers or stewards of the planet. And the priestess symbolizes the temple, and the tending of the soils, fires, and water also tends that earth and temple. So it has a strong relationship to the sign of Virgo, but it kind of falls into a greater, like, cosmic level experience or projection from Earth. The Great Lady constellations. This comes from ancient Mesopotamia, called Nimna and Absine. Though not explicitly included in the table of constellations in the path of the moon, other sections of the Molopan, which is a tablet, they refer to a celestial great lady, Nimma, and locate her in the same area of the sky as the ear of grain. And Nimma was one of the Sumerian epithets for famous fertility goddess Ishtar, the Sumerian Inanna, forerunner to the Greek Aphrodite. This is a quote we don't have to read the whole thing here, but it comes from this great issue of Sky and Telescope that goes into the ancient Mesopotamian origins of the zodiacal constellations, written by Craig Crossan. And there is relations to the god Enlil, who was the patron god of the northern skies, but he was also has a deep connection to the Greco-Roman Kronos and Saturn. And so there's this even a thread that you can weave into that area of like in the mythology of things. One of the things that I wanted to point out in that last big paragraph there that says to the right of is Enki on that depiction up the top depiction there, the patron deity of the southern heavens, holding Corvus, the celestial raven. You can see the bird there, and this in one hand, and then to the left is Leo, the lion. And so it's off the screen. It's not. There is behind the winged, which is the priestess, I think, right there. She's an Ishtar or Inanna. Off to there is the lion. So I couldn't fit it on the screen because there was so much to add to that. But if you Google it, you can easily find that depiction. But we can see like the cosmic story like on these depictions from ancient times. And so the cylinder seal design shows the heavens as they would have appeared in the 3rd millennium BC at sunrise in early September, the time of year, the highly important date of harvest. So that is just like another deep, really profoundly deep connection between the priestess and the earth herself, as well as obviously the connection of the grains. So it's like that you can, with these depictions, we can navigate the skies in a way through this. So when the priestess marked the June solstice from about 7,500 BCE to 4,300 BCE, the Priestess constellation marked the June solstice and was part of the golden age of humanity. This is also when the bull was moving. Well, at the end of that was the bull was moving into the equinox point. But this was also, Bernadette Bridey writes that this was said to have ended when the goddess had no longer governed the solstices. And for the Egyptians, they saw the shift in the constellation of the summer solstices as a crisis. And they believed that the goddess had left the earth to return to heaven in distress at the behavior of humans in the Silver Age. Even 95 or 60, 300 years ago, they were already seeing it that way as the behavior of humans in the Silver Age. So I would say that they would be aghast at what was going on today, at the behavior of many humans here on this planet. Not all of them, of course, but there are, we can see it happening here.
And some would say we're in the Iron Age. So Silver Age sounds a little like it was the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and now we're in the Iron Age.
Yeah.
So if they were distressed in the Silver Age, oh, wow, it's been a while.
Yes, it has. So during the end of this period is when humanity experienced the early signs of the waning of the matriarchal and matrilineal culture. So like at the end of that, the priestess of the summer solstice or the June solstice at 4,300 BC. So it wouldn't really take root until the end of the time when the bull constellation marked the March equinox and the emergence of Gilgamesh and the death of the great bull of heaven. And that's a quote from Bernadette Brady's book of Fixed Stars. So she's got some really good stuff in her books there. So this is when Spica marked the June solstice, and at 6287, that's when it was exactly center, but it moves 1 degree every 72 years. So it would have marked it at least for 1 degree on either side, 144 years. And but Spica was involved in the June solstice point for hundreds of years. So you can see like that was a totally different time period there. But I wanted to give you this map to kind of give you that there at 0 degrees Cancer. was half in, or about 2/3 in Gemini, and then the other third was in Cancer at that moment. But then it continued to move into deeper into Cancer.
And now this point, Spica is at 24 Libra, so it's moved a long way
It
since.
has moved a long way, absolutely.
Yeah.
So of course, Egypt, Isis, Hathor, and the priestess, both Hathor and Isis at one time or another, depending on the time period, were associated with the priestess. So while the Egyptians saw the passing of this constellation as the end of the age of the goddess, Isis and Hathor were the primary goddesses that projected upon this one. So Hathor became the cow bull goddess at the time when the bull marked the March equinox, and she was associated with the priestess before that. And she was a mother goddess deeply connected to fertility, but also joy, sexuality, and music. And she was one of the original goddesses, but it is not known how far back it goes with her. And Isis, another one of great antiquity. Like, we don't know how far back these goddesses go, but I'm sure long before records were carved into stone and so forth. And she was really a powerful influence, and picked at numerous times with wings and nursing the child Horus. And again, there are a lot of, as you mentioned, Kaylin, with the winged goddesses. Even the priestess was Inanna, the queen of heaven and earth, pictured with wings a lot. So a lot of goddesses are, again, projected and associated with this particular constellation.
So up here is the
Yep.
winged Isis,
Yep.
and there's a lot of speculation
Anubis
that
is down below there.
down below.
Anubis is the one.
Oh yeah,
preparing the
Anubis,
dead.
yeah, down here. Okay, gotcha. But that with Isis with her outstretched wings represented the Milky Way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There is some information about that. I could have made this a lot longer.
Oh, I know. Me too.
Yeah. So if someone called that constellation the goddess constellation, you wouldn't be wrong. I mean, this would be something anyone could call. And many cultures projected the goddess on there: Egyptians, Mesopotamians, the Greek, the Romans, ancient people of South America and India. China, for whatever reason, called it the Frigid Maiden, though it is unknown why. But maybe she was at one time when those words came out. Maybe it was when their cold season was there. Maybe that was part of it. Maybe there was the early part of when autumn was coming, when the colder winds were coming in or something. That's, again, I'm speculating as to why they did that, but it's unknown as to why.
I think that it has to do with when Spica was with the summer solstice. So then, so the summer solstice sun would be there, so you wouldn't see Spica or the maiden then. But in the winter, you would have seen her, and that might be why they did that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So the connection to this Earth Mother and this constellation is telling, and especially to the history of humanity's reverence for the planet up to until the monotheistic religions and patriarchal cultures emerged from the multi-century collapse of matriarchal societies in the third and second millennia BCE. So we still very strongly rely on the annual harvest and bounties of the earth and our seasonal pattern, and we feel it when it is out of balance. The constellation reminds us of our origins and what has been lost, but it is also a reminder of what we can rebirth in an entirely new way. So it's a reminder to co-create with her in that way, co-creating with Earth, essentially with the goddess. And you can see her pictured there with a horn of plenty, cornucopia, and she's got an agricultural, I think a scythe or something on her other hand there. It shows her, her deep, profound connection and the feminine connection to Gaia herself. And this is something we know, that Earth is in a bit of a crisis, and this is a reminder of us having a deeper and more intimate relationship with her, and the patterns that she's weaved for us in concert with the sky, and to help us understand our own individual patterns, but also society's patterns, that we ourselves don't have to, in our lives, especially in the crisis that we're in as humanity, in this turning of the ages, that we can move, we can change it. We have I say the power and the will to do that if we so chose. So this is one of those things that, when I see this particular constellation, and I'll be talking about Spica here in a little bit, that's what I think of. So when the stars marked of the priestess marked certain seasonal points. So the June solstice, this goes back many thousands of years. So Savijava marked was the last star of the last major star of the priestess to mark the June solstice at 4221 BCE, and it goes all the way back roughly a 3,000 year period when Kambalia marked the June solstice at 7249 BC. Again, those are exact years. So it's not just, oh, it was only there for just 1 year, but for several years, if not many centuries. So you can work with that in your own life, and when you're looking at this, and maybe looking to the future at when a certain star will mark one of the four corners of the earth, so to speak. But also we can even, I'm only using solstices and equinoxes, but you can use cross quarter points if you want as well. September equinox, just as a reminder, the star Zavijava, that's the next one to mark the September equinox, 2200 CE. Zanaya marked it for about almost 400 years ago at 1653, and Spica way back in 286 CE. So this is just another, like, where this constellation is today, and just another kind of a reminder of that everybody can look at this. And I've got this to include Arcturus. I've got some slides about Arcturus and Spica in here. That's another one where I could double or triple the slides about the Spica Arcturus relationship, and all the mythology that's weaved into this with all of that. So
we did cover quite a lot of that in the Bohemian stars class.
That's right. Yes, that's right.
Arcturus being both Bohemian stars. Yeah.
Yeah, you can refer to that series and check that if you haven't already. Check that out, or rewatch that particular video. All right, so Spica, it's the brightest star in the Priestess constellation, 250 light years away, magnitude almost +1, plus 0.9. So it's the brightest one in the area. It's fairly easy to pick out. It symbolizes the hand of the priestess holding the shaft of grain, and its intimate resonance with the feminine and earth. In one corner of the world, the Arabian people referred to it as a connection to the lion, the calf of the lion, or the shin of bone of the lion. That's, anyway, another interesting connection to the lion. They also called it, and this is a very patriarchal projection, defenseless, solitary, and unarmed. So again, that was a later definition of this particular, compared to more ancient times, of this particular star. But Bernadette Brady writes, it's a Spica represents gift of brilliance, a hidden and obvious talent, skill, or ability that is out of the ordinary. The word gifted applies to strong Spica people, and whatever the star touches, it will illuminate in some way. It sits at 24 degrees Libra, and Arcturus is also less than half a degree from that, so 24.5 degrees Libra. So the heliacal rise of Spica and the harvest. So this is something I found recently more directly, and from Astronomy magazine. Over 8,000 years ago, Spica was a prominent star for the Egyptians and likely other cultures in the Northern Hemisphere. This is a time when it became intimately connected to the harvest. So the work of two writers, Patricia Gary and Richard Talcott, in Astronomy Magazine from 2006. So they write, they believe that the heliacal rising of Spica, the brightest star in the constellation Virgo, aka the Priestess, may have heralded the Egyptian harvest season. In 6000 BC, around the time that agriculture started to flourish, Spica's heliacal rising occurred around July 10th. This would have been timed perfectly to signal the beginning of the harvest season. Spica may have played a role in the conception of this object called the Dijid pillar, an Egyptian fetish symbol that likely first appeared as part of a simple harvest ritual. Inscriptions and scenes of worship preserved in the building texts at the Temple of Edfu seem to connect the Dijid pillar's origins to sky observations, and Spica's association with the harvest could have been key. I would absolutely say that the sky was part of their thoughts. It was part of their philosophy. It was part of their living. They lived and breathed it. I mean, everything was part of that as much as the land was. So absolutely. And anyway, I just find this that article really fascinating. I've got the link there. It's not very long. You could check out more of the research that they did in that. For this to write about this particular star.
It's also reminiscent of the, I think there were a lot of cultures. I was in Rennes-le-Château in France back in 2007, and they were talking about when the sun was with the priestess in August. And the Christians decided to make the feast day of Mother Mary, or the Assumption of Mother Mary, I'm sorry, the Assumption of Mother Mary in August, because she was with the sun, because the Virgin, the priestess was with the sun. So being assumed by the light of the sun, and they were overlaying that story of being assumed, of Mother Mary being assumed by her son.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And now that's happening in October. So it's shifted quite a lot since the time that they decided to create that. But they still celebrate August 15th as the Assumption of the Virgin Mother.
So it comes from the sky.
Yes.
It comes from the priestess and the sun.
Yes. Yes.
Beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. I thought you'd like that.
Yeah. And so this is more about this article that I wanted to write a little bit more here. I wanted to include a little bit more for people. They say at the end here, the combination and prominence and color at the time of its heliacal rising. They argue that the ancient Egyptians may have revered Spica, which it would make total sense to me. Blue was an important color. They say they really tap that out. Blue, important color to the Egyptians, and pharaohs prized the deep blue gemstone lapis lazuli. So they're actually making connections to the stone, the color of the star, and the color of that they prized. And so it was actually what are they? Okay, so yeah, so Spica was it's the bluest naked eye star according to their research. Anyway, there's things in there that it just blows me away. I love that when they connect the dots and they're not just making prejudgments over the ancient people, meaning as if they were primitive or something, but they actually, like, there's almost like a sense of honoring what they did back then without getting too deep into it. So I appreciated their research there.
I love this, and my favorite color has always been blue, even though I know it's most people's favorite color. But I usually like to be different, but it's just my favorite color. Can't help it.
Yeah, that's one of my top 3 favorite colors for sure. It's hard for me to choose just one. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well.
So more about Spica. So Spica has been referred to other descriptions throughout the world. In India, they once called it the star a lamp or a pearl, and it's been called the lute bearer by Egypt at one time in its history, and Chinese called it at one time the horn or the spike, which I didn't look up the origins of the word Spica, but Kaylin, you may know off the top of your head?
It was the spike of grain, I think. Spike
Okay. Uh-huh.
representing the spike of grain. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So it was also called the Star of Prosperity, the propitious one of seed, and related to the corn bearer, referring to the intimate connection of Earth's bountiful harvest. And according to Starlight Elixirs, Spica can promote the transference of consciousness from the superconscious into the waking conscious state. And this can enhance lucid dreaming states and some psychic abilities, including psychometry, levitation by use of pure mind energy, and remote viewing. So it's definitely got some really powerful astral qualities to it. And Spica may be able to strengthen the physical, represented by the trunk of the body, and the mental, as represented by the skull. So the trunk of the physical body in us, and then the skull in ourselves. So like the mind's connection and the consciousness connection to the body itself. So it's a way to bring those two and bring them together into harmony. Here's just an interesting when you look at the sky, and this is the sky that really becomes more visible in the evening time later in the winter and spring here in the northern hemisphere, and also parts of summer as well. So, but you can pick out from Denebola to Arcturus to Spica as a triangle, but then there's a diamond if you include Cor Caroli at the Bernice's Hair, which is a separate constellation. I don't necessarily need to get into that. Actually, hang on, it's just above. No, Bernice's Hair is right below there, and to the left. No. That one, Canis Veneta, is a dog, and it's connected to the hunting dogs as well as referred to as Charles's heart. So it's kind of a more modern constellation, roughly not modern in the sense of the 20th century, but from going back to the 17th century. This is, again, these are ways to kind of connect for all of us. If we're trying to learn the night sky, you can look at this diamond figure with these 4 stars, and you can look at the spring triangle here between Spica, Arcturus, and Denebola. Again, it would be the fall triangle in the southern hemisphere when they would be seeing that. But up here where I think most of the people that are signed up for this course are here north of the equator. So
Yeah.
we can talk about that there.
Just a quick aside too, is that if you can make a triangle, it's not as perfect a triangle as with Denebola, but with Regulus, Spica, and Arcturus. And those
yes, I have seen that written too. Yeah.
Yeah, and those are 3 Bohemian stars as well, creating a triangle that is pretty cool to see in the sky.
Oh, right. Yeah, absolutely. So connecting the stars, Arcturus and Spica. This is fascinating. They're both at 24 Libra. Back in, I think it was 2016, Mars, I think it was, Mars had its opposition. I'll have to look back at that, but there was a time where Mars had its opposition with the sun and started a whole new synodic cycle. And it would, and I kept going outside and looking at Mars rising with Arcturus and Spica. Like they kept being a pair, like, because it would go back and forth in that area of the sky, and I would watch it often. And so sometimes you can get, when you see a planet go in that area, you can often connect those 2 stars even better, because it starts to highlight that area. But Spica and Arcturus, zodiacally speaking, are less than half a degree apart. So in September and October, Spica is too close to the sun, and only Arcturus can be visible, but that depends on how far south you are living. Like up here where I am, you can see Arcturus, it doesn't set. It goes, pretty much all night. And, so the sun, because it's so far north of the ecliptic, it's not, the sun doesn't really cover that up very much. So, but if you're much farther south, you won't be able to see it because it will, like uh, in where I was in Bisbee in September, Arizona, it would set there. So here's some information that you're welcome. I encourage you all to read if you haven't read Kaylin Costell's article, Spike and Arcturus. Please go there, and of course the Bohemian Star series to learn more about that. But they occupy the same longitudinal or zodiacal degree, and it's kind of the same thing. Arcturus will rise about 45 minutes before Spica, due to Arcturus being nearly 30 degrees or about 30 degrees north of the ecliptic. So, and Kaylin goes on to describe a lot of the qualities and what they represent. And so that there's a sentence in there. It just so happens that currently it is in the sign of Libra, and they are expressing through adding to the mysteries of conscious, co-creative, collaborative partnering. Because we write about how Arcturus has a deep connection to the masculine, and how, of course, Spica with the feminine. So together there's the connection to the one source and the sacred marriage, where we can all co-create together. So it's not they're partnering up, they're pairing up. So one isn't without the other, so to speak.
I love that they travel together, and that there's a lot of stories that represent Arcturus as the masculine and Spica as the feminine. And so that's definitely, and they're in Libra. So it's like, we still have a long time of them being in Libra. So maybe we'll somehow figure out how to do that kind of partnering between the masculine and the feminine in a way that's really supportive for both.
Yes. So here's Lady Justice. This is this combination of the Priestess and the Scales. Now that card, it's kind of has a little bit of a masculine figure there, but at one time it was more feminine. So it's basically the Priestess holding the scales, and we can see Lady Justice. This is I'm sure all of you, if not everybody that's watching this, either the live or recorded, has seen some imagery of Lady Justice, especially here in the United States. It shows statues of Lady Justice shows that justice is blind, meaning impartial, or without the preconceived notion of judgment, without hearing a case and listening to both sides. So this goes back, like that particular tarot card goes back about 1,000 years. But the scales, which are the constellation that comes immediately after the Priestess, kind of connects those two. And then we've already described the connection between the Lion and the Priestess. So these constellations represent different things, but there are bridges that connect these things. And there's a shared community of stars that weave together to that co-create in our understanding of where we are in time and the turning of the ages. So Spica is also a star that stands for the Lady of Justice, and the combinations of these constellations are connected to this particular card, and representing day and night and the balance of the scales. I mean, the scales we're going to be covering, Kaylin, you'll be doing that one in the next class. So I don't need to go into too much in there, but this is, if we are true to this, we know that here in the US that, I think most cases that are heard are necessarily like they are generally impartial, but there are definitely those that are not. And there's always especially if they're coming from like a political party or some other agenda perspective, then there could be some bias thrown into that, where justice isn't truly blind. And I was reading some blurbs and articles where some legal scholars are saying justice is not really blind, it's this, no, but it's this, and the debate rages on. So anyway, so we can look to her in a way as part of that. And so that's part of that, one of the mysteries that is represented in the sky there.
Beautiful.
More here about Spica. And Bernadette Brady writes, in present times, the type of knowledge that I'm gonna share here is not venerated. So if Virgo was created in the 20th century, she might well be holding a silicon chip. So instead of a grain, which they revered at that time, and she's also pictured with wings in this picture, she was the symbol for the harvested grain and the Earth Mother, and connected to the priestess goddesses of Hestia and Vesta as well. So like that has a much deeper and richer, more intimate connection to our DNA. But Bernadette Brady, kind of a tongue in cheek, but also to some degree serious, that like, hey, this, we could be looking at that as if we're championing our particular only the mind over matter, where we're trying to control Earth. So yeah, and then we have Vendimatrix, and I may not pronounce, I always call it Vendimatrix just because it's easier to say, but maybe that might not be the right pronunciation for it. What do you call it, Kaylin?
I say Vendimatrix, Vendimatrix, I think is how I say
Vendimatrix.
it.
Okay.
Vendimatrix, yeah.
It's a star that was once known, at 10 degrees Libra, 109 light years away, less than 3 magnitude, was known as the grape gatherer for the Romans and Greeks, and it was connected to the harvest and grapes in the Mediterranean Sea. But it was also about gentle action, is a way to describe the star and the natal chart. So it's a type of action that takes care in the action itself, and quite different from the Aries Mars expression. So another star that represents that. So this one, Parima, 10.5 degrees Libra, 38 light years away at 3.5 magnitude. This has to do with it's a star of prophecy. And there's a lot of good information about the the two goddesses, Antevorta and Postvorta, which mean looking forward and looking back. And there actually is, it's a binary star, but right now they used to be more separate, and you can be able to actually see the difference with the naked eye, but right now the stars are too close together, so you can't see that. So that's anyway, it's very interesting that it's connected on that level. So the I want to go to the next slide if we could, because this is the one that, together with the goddess Carmenta or Carmentis and Postvorta and Antevorta, they are all three the Carmente or Carmente. And this word, actually, the origins of this word is like where we get the word charm from, and the Latin word Carmen, which means magical spell, oracle, and song. And there's a connection to, like, it's like the goddess version of Janus, who is the forwards and backwards god. So briefly, they also represented connection to childbirth. So Antevorta was said to be present when the baby was born head first, and Postvorta when the feet of the baby came first. And they would set up, wives and women would set up 2 altars, one to Antevorta, one to Postvorta, depending on what was happening there. So planets transiting the priestess. So here we are. We don't have to read off all this. Everybody's going to get the slides to this. So Kaylin, you already covered when the sun is there. I've got September 18th through November 3rd, but that can vary by a day or two, depending on how we define the boundaries, so to speak, of the constellations. Ceres is right there right now in 2022 and 23. Saturn will be there in 2038, and Chiron, Uranus decades later. Pluto transited there from 1969 to 1987, and Eris won't get there until 2243. And Jupiter, yeah, long time. And then Jupiter in 2027 through 29. And Kaylin, this is your slide. Okay.
So this star Kambalia is at the foot of the Virgin priestess, And one of my favorite stars, I've done a lot of around this, and it's referred to as the star of secret knowledge. Eric Morris just calls it that in his book, The Living Stars. And it's connected to the swastika. So the word Kambalia means crooked claw, or like the image of the swastika. Now, what's interesting is that on Prophecy Rock, they have a swastika that is depicted in the petroglyphs on that rock. I've been there, I've seen it, it's pretty cool. The original swastika was kind of more upright and it stood for good luck, but then Hitler took it and twisted it and turned it, and it became a symbol of fear. So, but the older symbol was of love, life, and light. So just so you know that. And then also Kambalia has this connection to the word Shambhala or Shambhala, and it has to do with like perhaps a place of where we connect to Shambhala. I like the Three Dog Night song On the Road to Shambhala. Where does your light shine? On the road to Shambhala. So that it's more of a place of like heaven, where we can consider that that's where we all would probably really like to be. And the word Kamir also has a connection to being a symbol for the secret of wine, but also for the secret of life and the spirit, again, as well as the means to enter a transcendental or maybe just an inebriated state of consciousness. So Kambalia is suggesting, if we think about it as being secret knowledge, that it's bringing to light all that's hidden from our awareness and our memory. That we have connection to all these secrets, we just don't remember, we just aren't aware of what they are. And it also connects to the Empress, the card in the major arcana known as the Empress. Kitson says, a quick mind, quick responses, calculates needs before taking action. It can stumble but can recover. So any star that's passing this, or any planet that's passing this star, is receiving the messages of secret knowledge. So I love to tune into it. And I feel like, as I mentioned earlier, it's already in our DNA. It's how do we access it? And then, so here's the Empress card, and the sun is passing this star every year around October 29 and 30. At the lunar eclipse, the solar eclipse that happened on a couple of weeks ago, the moon passed this star after the eclipse was complete, but in that window. And then of course Mercury was there on the 2nd of November. Venus was there on the 28th of October, and Mars doesn't get there until October 22nd of 2023. And then these are just showing where the outer planets, when they're entering Scorpio. I didn't look up the exact dates, I just didn't really have time for that, so I just trying to give people a sense of, if you want to look it up. So for example, I have Neptune in Scorpio, entered Scorpio in 1956. That was the year I was born, and so it wound up being within about 6.5 degrees of this star. And just to have that sense of how the Empress is connected to the fertile abundance of Mother Earth. This is just more of what we've already been talking about, how this constellation really represents all of that. So it's also connected to mothers and women who care about nurturing life. She loves creating beauty and harmony that inspires awe through art, music, education, relational skills, and other ways to build and nurture all life through her creativity. So this is a powerful star. There's also a lot more information. There's an article link on the class page. If you want to go and find out more about this star, you can do that.
And yeah, personal stars. For me, there's 2 of them. So the star Surma, which is part of the leg and or maybe even the robe of the priestess, and then Kambalai. That's the foot of the priestess, and connected certainly to the earth. And I'll show you here on my chart on this next slide here. So we've got, the arrow pointing to where my midheaven is at 416. and Cambalia was at 6.5 Scorpio at the time I was born. So it's only 2.5 degrees, less than 2.5 degrees away. And then Surma was only about less than 1 degree away from that. So I can, for me, my midheaven being in that place is pretty cool that it's connected to the earth, and it isn't just, the 11th house in Scorpio, but it has this other deeper layer to it with that particular area of the constellation of the priestess, and the connection to that celestial goddess. So, and her being on this planet, and Gaia herself. So I'm pretty pleased with having that, and excited about learning more about that myself.
And so just something that's fun for both Eric and I is we both have I have my midheaven connected to Regulus, and he has his midheaven connected to Cambalia. And so these are the kinds of things that we encourage everyone to check out your own natal chart and what stars you have connected. Do you have these stars, any of these stars connected to some part of your personal chart? Because then they are more powerfully connected to you. Doesn't mean that, like, I connect with stars that I don't necessarily have personal chart alignments with. I know you do too, Eric, but that, when we do have personal chart connections, it's like, oh, how cool is that? So, yeah. So anything else you wanted to say in closing before we wrap this up?
No, I just want to thank everyone for being being able to be on here the whole time we did this longer version of this class. So lots more to come. We have 2 more classes, the next one on the scales and the scorpion. Kaylin, any thoughts?
Well, and I did warn everybody in the last class that this one might be a longer one, and I was right.
Yes.
And of course, you know what? I love to be right, so it's kind of fun.
Not to brag or anything, right?
Not to brag. And just Zita is just saying this class was so juicy. Thank you. So that's awesome. And we just,
Thank you, Zita.
if anybody has a question, you want to jump in, we could take one, but otherwise we're just going to say, we'll give you a minute. We'll give you a second. The scales and the scorpion. And as we were just talking about how the priestess is connected to the scales, very cool. And then we'll also probably share with you how the scorpion is connected to the scales as well in our next class. So lots to look forward to. We're really excited about that. This will be the completion of the 12 zodiacal constellations. Then our last class, and also be sure to note the date changes for the classes. And then the last class will be, we're going to talk a little bit about Ophiuchus, mainly because some people would like to say it's on the ecliptic, but we'll talk about that. So
yeah, that'll be, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you, everybody. And thank you for your time and for being with us. And we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Happy eclipse, everyone.
Bye.